I want to just start tonight with a hugely consequential defeat for Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. We covered this a bunch on the show when it happened, but back in October, Pete Hegseth put some what I would call Kremlin-esque press policies in place at the Pentagon. I mean, he basically put a policy in place that said the Pentagon could revoke the credentials of any journalist who solicited information that the department did not explicitly authorize for release, even if that information was unclassified. And listen, I dealt with reporters for 20 years. That is not how it works. And you also don't need to have gone to journalism school to know that is literally the job of journalists. I mean, Hegseth's policy was so insane that dozens of news organizations refused to sign a pledge agreeing to it. Even Newsmax, remember, they refused to sign it too. The New York Times eventually sued the government over that policy, and late today, the New York Times won, and Pete Hegseth's Pentagon lost. Late today, a judge ruled that Pete Hegseth's press restrictions are unconstitutional. And in his ruling, Judge Paul Friedman did not hold back. Here's what he wrote. The court recognizes that national security must be protected. The security of our troops must be protected, and war plans must be protected. But especially in light of the country's recent incursion into Venezuela and its ongoing war with Iran, it is more important than ever that the public have access to information from a variety of perspectives about what its government is doing, so that the public can support government policies if it wants to support them, protest if it wants to protest, and decide based on full, complete, and open information who they are going to vote for in the next election. And amen to every word of that. I mean, the American people deserve to know what their government is doing, no matter who's in power, especially during a time of war. And press freedom is especially important during this war, because during this war, we have a president of the United States who is either lying every time he speaks or is completely out of touch with the reality, or a combination of the two. And so a free press that can question, that can push and hold this administration to account is the only way for us to figure out what the hell is going on. I mean, today we got some thoughts from the president on the thing that remains one of the most challenging aspects of this war at the moment, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Because to hear Trump tell it, the closure of one of the world's most important oil choke points really isn't a big deal at all.
Do you plan to escort those ships through the Strait of Hormuz with or without allies?
We're doing very well there. We're doing very well overall. You know, we don't use the strait. We don't, the United States, we don't need it.
We're doing really well there, apparently, by his definition. I mean, what he either doesn't understand or is refusing to say is really basic economics 101. Oil prices are fundamentally global. It's about supply and demand. And when the strait that literally accounts for 20% of the world's oil is blocked, that is going to be felt everywhere, including in the United States. And it is being felt across the United States. You probably are feeling it. And today, the head of the International Energy Agency issued a pretty dire warning, saying that this war is the greatest threat to global energy in history. He added that it could take 6 months or longer to fully restore oil and gas flows from the Gulf. And people, as I just mentioned, you probably are feeling it every single day when they fill up their gas tank. I mean, gas is headed toward $4 a gallon, which is a spike of 30% since the war started just 3 weeks ago. I would say that's kind of a big deal. I'm sure you think it's a very big deal. And apparently, though, it's just small stuff for Donald Trump. And as for reopening the Strait of Hormuz as quickly as possible and minimizing this crisis, well, Trump says that's apparently an easy one, too.
You said opening the Strait of Hormuz is a simple military maneuver.
Very simple.
Yeah, but what did you mean by that?
It's a simple military maneuver. At a certain point, it'll open itself.
It's a simple maneuver, says no one. It's going to practically open itself up, says no one either. Or no, it won't. I mean, it's clearly not going to open itself up. Opening the Strait of Hormuz is anything but simple. Military and shipping experts tell MS Now that a U.S. military effort to reopen the strait by force would likely require U.S. ground troops in a dangerous, costly operation that could drag on for years. And as of now, ship captains say they still have not heard a clear plan from U.S. military officials. So just to recap, oil prices continue to rise. There's no plan to reopen the strait. The world is teetering on the verge of a global energy crisis. And Trump is saying it's all no big deal. In fact, he took to Truth Social tonight and declared that, quote, "We are getting very close to meeting our objectives as we consider winding down our great military efforts." Now, I would note we still have no idea what those objectives are. And notably, he also suggested that he may just abandon his efforts, to reopen the strait, saying that he will leave the problem to, quote, other nations who use it, that is, unless he is asked. So that's where we are right now on this Friday. He doesn't think the Strait of Hormuz is that big of a deal. He seems to think that it's somehow going to just open itself up. And while it might be time to wind down anyway and let someone else solve this crisis, a crisis that he created. But despite what Trump is saying out loud, whether he is lying about all of this or just plain confused, who knows? All signs point to this ramping up, not winding down, including actions from this administration. I mean, as MS Now reports, the U.S. military is currently sending thousands of additional troops to the Middle East, and multiple sources briefed on the discussions tell CBS that Pentagon officials have made detailed preparations for deploying U.S. ground forces into Iran. The Pentagon has also asked for $200 billion in additional funding to continue Trump's war in Iran. And just for some perspective on kind of how big that number is, that figure represents about a quarter of what the United States spent on the war in Iraq, which went on, of course, for more than 13 years. And while Trump is attempting to downplay the huge economic impact of this war that he started, his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, seems to be pretty concerned. I mean, in an effort to bring oil prices back down, his department announced late tonight that they've temporarily lifted sanctions on Iranian oil that's already at sea, because nothing says we've got this under control like lifting sanctions on the country we're bombing. Nothing says that. So, yeah, despite Trump's delusions, lies, spin, confusion, whatever you want to call it, there are clear signals that this war as of now is dragging on. And that is infuriating. It should be infuriating, especially given the fact that Trump is the only reason we're in this position to begin with.